At just 24 years old, John Travolta stood where most actors never reach in a lifetime. He was the youngest performer ever nominated for a Best Actor Academy Award, a global star before his identity had time to settle. Saturday Night Fever in Greece exploded into cultural phenomena, earning more than $600 million combined and transforming Travolta into something larger than an actor. He wasn't just famous, he was unavoidable. His walk, his smile, his dancing became symbols of an era. But success at that speed comes with a cost few understand. Fame didn't arrive gradually for Travolta. It crashed into his life all at once. There was no time to grow into it, no space to fail quietly or learn slowly. The world crowned him before he fully knew who he was. And when success arrives before stability, it leaves behind pressure instead of protection, expectations instead of grounding, and a spotlight that never truly turns off. The quiet beginnings in New Jersey, long before disco floors and flashing cameras, John Travolta grew up in Englewood, New Jersey, in a crowded working-class home where money was limited, but imagination wasn't. He was the youngest of 6 children, often overlooked, but never unseen by his mother, Helen. His father worked long hours selling tires, carrying the weight of providing, while his mother filled their home with creativity. She was a drama teacher who believed performance could give people confidence when life took it away. In that living room, acting wasn't about fame. It was about expression and survival. Helen taught John that being different wasn't a weakness, it was a tool. That belief mattered when school felt hostile and fitting in felt impossible. Before Hollywood ever noticed him, someone had already told him he mattered. That early encouragement became the foundation that carried him through rejection, loneliness, and fear when the world outside offered none of it. Dropping out to chase a dream. By his mid-teens, Travolta faced a decision that terrified his family. He dropped out of high school and moved to New York City with little money and enormous ambition. It wasn't rebellion, it was belief. He slept on couches, worked odd jobs, and attended auditions where rejection was routine and encouragement rare. The city didn't care that he was talented or hopeful. It demanded resilience. Most teenagers would have broken under that pressure, but Travolta didn't. He kept showing up, learning, watching, absorbing everything. Every no sharpened him instead of stopping him. When Welcome Back Kotter finally gave him a role, it wasn't luck, it was survival paying off. Fame followed quickly, but it rested on years of quiet struggle no audience ever saw. His rise looked sudden, but it was built on exhaustion, discipline, and a willingness to risk everything without guarantees. That hunger would fuel his early success, but it would also make the fall harder. The Disco King and the illusion of invincibility. Saturday Night Fever didn't just make John Travolta famous, it reshaped popular culture. Tony Manero became a symbol of confidence, rebellion, and escape. Audiences didn't just watch him dance, they believed in him. The white suit, the music, the movement, all merged into something iconic. Then Grease followed, brighter and bigger, cementing Travolta as Hollywood's golden boy. At 24, he had conquered the industry, but success can create an illusion of control. When everything works once, it's easy to believe it always will. Travolta was young, celebrated, and surrounded by people who said yes instead of telling the truth. The industry lifted him quickly, but it didn't teach him how fragile that lift really was. Fame rewards momentum, not loyalty. And once the cultural tide shifted, the same spotlight that built him would quietly begin to turn away, leaving him exposed without warning. When Hollywood turned its back. The early 1980s were unforgiving. Projects that once would have succeeded collapsed under changing tastes and expectations. Films like Moment by Moment and Staying Alive didn't just disappoint, they rewrote Travolta's reputation. Critics were harsh, studios lost confidence. The same industry that celebrated him now labeled him unreliable. By 30, he wasn't just struggling, he was dismissed. Hollywood rarely waits for recovery. Once momentum breaks, silence replaces opportunity. For Travolta, the shift was brutal. Fame had taught him visibility, not stability. The calls stopped, the scripts disappeared, and the world moved on. What hurt most wasn't public criticism, but invisibility. He had gone from being everywhere to being forgotten. For an actor whose identity was built around performance and connection, that absence was disorienting. The fall wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, and that made it harder to fight. a second chance no one expected. When Quentin Tarantino cast John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, it wasn't nostalgia, it was conviction. Vincent Vega wasn't glamorous or heroic. He was flawed, uncertain, strangely relatable. That mattered. Travolta brought vulnerability instead of swagger, restraint instead of spectacle. The performance reminded audiences that he was more than a symbol of the past. The comeback wasn't polite, it was explosive. Awards followed. Respect returned. Hollywood welcomed him back. But this resurrection was different. Travolta had been humbled. He no longer chased approval, he valued purpose. He chose roles more carefully, understanding that success without meaning wasn't enough. Pulp Fiction didn't just revive his career, it reshaped his relationship with fame. For the first time, he understood that survival in Hollywood required adaptability, patience, and self-awareness. He had been given a second chance, and he treated it like something fragile instead of permanent. A loss that changed everything. In 2009, tragedy entered Travolta's life in a way no professional setback ever could. His 16-year-old son, Jet, died suddenly during a family vacation. The loss shattered the foundation of his world. Fame, awards, and recognition became irrelevant overnight. He wasn't an actor grieving, he was a father broken by unimaginable pain. Friends later admitted they feared he might never recover emotionally. Work stopped mattering, passion faded. Even flying planes, once a source of peace, lost its meaning. Grief doesn't follow structure, and Travolta didn't pretend it did. He withdrew, protected his family, and learned to live with absence. This loss didn't make headlines for long, but it permanently altered his priorities. The man who once chased momentum now valued presence. Success no longer defined him. Survival did. And from that moment forward, everything he did carried the weight of someone he could never bring back. Losing the one who held him together, if Jet's death broke him, losing his wife nearly emptied what was left. In 2020, Kelly Preston died after a private battle with breast cancer. She had been Travolta's anchor, his steady presence through grief and recovery. Losing her meant losing his emotional center. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic, it was heavy. Friends noticed he retreated further from public life. Interviews became rare. Appearances faded. The man who once filled rooms with energy now chose solitude. Fame offers attention, not comfort. And when grief becomes layered, applause loses its meaning. Kelly had been the person who reminded him to keep going, to keep finding joy. Without her, life became quieter and smaller. He didn't disappear out of bitterness. He stepped back out of necessity. Healing required distance, not distraction. And for the first time, being alone felt less frightening than pretending everything was fine. Life at 71, smaller, quieter, real. Today, John Travolta lives quietly in Florida, surrounded by memories rather than noise. His focus is his children, especially his youngest son, Benjamin. The roles that once defined him feel distant, like photographs from another life. Hollywood hasn't called again, and this time there's no dramatic comeback waiting. Not because he lacks talent, but because the industry rarely offers third acts. And Travolta seems at peace with that. He mentors quietly, flies for charity, and lives away from the spotlight that once defined him. The silence isn't failure, it's choice. He has lived at extremes few understand. He knows what fame gives and what it takes. At 71, he no longer chases relevance. He values presence. His life may be quieter, but it's grounded. And sometimes surviving long enough to live gently is its own kind of victory. When the music stops, John Travolta's story isn't really about fame or failure. It's about cost. What happens when success comes too early, loss arrives too often, and life demands endurance instead of applause? He didn't just lose a career, he lost the people who made success meaningful. And that truth lives behind the smile generations remember. Fame can make the world dance, but it can't protect you when the music stops. Travolta learned that lesson repeatedly, at great personal cost. Yet he's still here, carrying grief without letting it erase him. He doesn't live loudly anymore, he lives honestly. And maybe that's the most human ending of all,